Welcome back to the United Pubcast, the original Manchester United podcast from the pub, probably to discuss all things pub related at Manchester United, Larry, because I did a video on Christian Eriksen the other day. I was expecting to probably do something a little bit more on Frankie de Jong or something transfer related. But here we are in the world of Manchester United, discussing the Manchester United CEO, discussing football with Man United fans at the pub. I didn't see that coming 24 hours ago, but that is the life of a Man United fan. And we're here to discuss all things that. So are you excited to discuss something other than Christian Eriksen and Frankie de Jong? But even though they'll tie straight into this discussion. But as I said, 24 hours ago, we weren't discussing Man United CEO at the pub.
No, we weren't. And it's refreshing, isn't it? And something that we'll definitely get into around all the comments and the conjecture around the situation and what's unfolded with Richard Arnold and the 6 fans, the 12 fans, the 200 fans who claimed that they were there. So I'm looking forward to ripping into it with you, mate.
That is definitely one thing which I'll get into the start, and we're going to discuss the fans going there and their right to protest and doing it in the correct manner, or like I believe it's a correct manner, but obviously some people might have a different opinion. But yeah, the way you do see it on social media, from all reports, it seems there'd be about 10 or 12 people were present. I've seen about 200 accounts say they were one of the 12 people. So a lot of these quotes do coming out. The only quotes I'm really going to give any sort of weight to are the ones I've visibly seen in the video. It's about a 4.5-minute video of Richard Arnold. There has been a lot of other quotes being floating about, but I don't want to attribute them to Richard Arnold if he hasn't actually said those, because there are some obvious that you can tell there's some fake ones in and around Paul Pogba and Jesse Lingard sort of thing. So it's an interesting one, but we'll say good day to some guys in the live chat. Vin, always good to see you, mate. Dion as well. Justin from the Supporters Club. Mike, always good to see you, mate, as always. Adam and Emad. Elliot here from the Supporters Club. Good to see you, mate. My mum is here. Good to see you back, Larry. Big fan, I take it.
Thanks, mate.
Ashby, good mate of mine. And George as well. Always good to see you. So, look, we'll fly straight into it and get your thoughts in the live chat in regards to all things. If there was a topic or a quote from Richard Arnold that sort of tickled your fancy that you wanted to discuss, throw it in the live chat or give us your opinions on it, and Larry and I will sort of dissect it. But where do you want to start, Larry? Because it wasn't sort of this sort of chronological thing that just sort of went in order. It wasn't like this scripted thing. It was very much a chat at the pub, very sort of similar to this pubcast. So it was sort of went back and forth, sort of variating from different topics. So where do you want to start, just with the breaking news, with the huge news? Because I think it's almost, I don't want to say the word monumental, but it is quite groundbreaking.
It is. Before we break down the content of the conversation, I just want to take a step back and say the gentleman who recorded Richard Arnold, clearly without authorization or his permission, for me is poor form. I think that as the CEO, to candidly and openly choose to sit with you at a pub as a fan and openly discuss your concerns as a football fan or a supporter of Manchester United Football Club, he doesn't have to do that. So he's given you the respect and the opportunity to do that, give you his time when he has no obligation to whatsoever. And someone had the audacity to sit there, record him without his permission. And along the same commentary or along the same post, he still works for the Glazers. Like, you're kidding yourself. Surely, I mean, full respect to Richard Arnold and props to him, because he's in one video, he's made more communication than Ed Woodward has made in his last failed 9 years. But I just thought, as those gentlemen had a responsibility to reciprocate the respect, and I thought they failed to do so. And that is the biggest issue.
Dion here agrees. And look, I completely agree. In terms of just the general nature, sort of guy code or person's code, Emad here saying bang on as well. I completely agree in essence, 100%. I definitely don't take this in a way that I'm defending their actions. However, here we are discussing it. We wanted to see what Richard Arnold had to say. Richard Arnold wasn't going to come out on the Man United YouTube channel or the Facebook page and make a statement and talk to the fans. Is this the only way we can get communication? And again, I'm not defending it, but is it the only way we can get some type of communication from the CEO? Again, not defending it. It's not right to do it without their permission. But ultimately, here we are discussing it. We all said, oh, this was good, this was bad. We're lapping it all up from an entertainment point of view. I'm just saying, yes, I understand in essence it's not the right thing to do. But here we are, we're lapping it up.
Well, we will lap it up because he's made comments that are of interest to us as United fans. But it doesn't change the fact that those gentlemen, like I said, I just felt they had an opportunity to build rapport. And you have to think, if you're Richard Arnold, these fans rightly or wrongly, were representing the fan base. So you could have represented yourself. You had a perfect opportunity to basically just tweet out, say, we met with Richard Arnold. Here's a photo. These are some of the things we discussed. This is what was said. And we could have happily left it there. Instead, you've snuck a camera under his nose, recorded him without his permission, and you've tried to undermine him in doing so. And I just thought, how poor. Because, like I said, he's taken the opportunity to address United fans out his way, bought them beers, and then they've returned with, it might cost Richard, it might not cost him his job. I think that's an exaggeration, but maybe he now gets, this guy's going to sit back and feel responsible for that.
Just while I go to one or two comments, Larry, just kick yourself out. You're just breaking up a little bit, and I'll just go to one or two comments in the live chat. But Emad here saying he also doesn't deserve fans planning to storm his driveway at home, where he has his wife and kids. The group are a joke. That plan the protest is disgraceful. And Mike saying, well said, Larry. I also felt the overly assertive tone of the questioning smacks of entitlement and just rude. And that's where I sort of go back to Larry's last point and agree. I think and here we are as fans dissecting it all, but I think what would have been perfect is, yes, just post a photo on social media saying, here's Richard Arnold, here's what we had a chat about. We discussed this, we discussed that. If people on social media weren't to believe you, if they said, no, that didn't happen, well, that's their prerogative. But ultimately, you would have known deep down, you would have had that communication. And I think 9 times out of 10, if you're sitting there with a photo of Richard Arnold, 9 times out of 10 people would believe you on Twitter. I don't think that's something sort of to make up. So I just agree with you there, Larry, in regards to, I think that would have been the ideal scenario in terms of have that meeting, have that sort of dialogue with the CEO, but just have a photo with him and say, if you want to post on social media, this is what was discussed. But yeah, actually secretly recording him, little bit of a low blow.
100%.
He is breaking up, Larry. See if you can go onto your mobile internet, your Wi-Fi, just kick yourself out again. See if you can sort of do a little bit of trickery with the mobile internet. But Jordan here, not really true fans trying to out him, for being honest, didn't have the club's interest in it at all. And I'm in two minds about the meeting. Yeah, definitely, I agree with that, Adam. I'll just kick Larry out, see if he does come back in. And we've also, but do get me your sort of live thoughts in there. I'll just go through one or two quotes in terms of what Richard Arnold says, and some of these do have the questions that do accompany them. But he says, in regards to the transfer market and how much money has spent, because we all criticise the Glazers and the board for not spending enough money. However, they do spend a lot of money. Yeah, you just have to look at the transfer fees that figure around. And he says, what happened is we effing burned through the cash. I can't go to our training ground and say, show me where that £1 billion is, which I think we sort of say so often in regards to the Man United players. Lukaku, was he 70 million? Pogba, 90 million. Angel Di Maria was 60-something million. Sanchez, the amount of wages spent on him. Well, the Glazers do spend money. It's not at Man United. Amad Diallo, was he the best part of 40 million potentially? He's not at Man United. Donny van der Beek was our big signing under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He wasn't at the club. So, yeah, you do go around this training ground and you say, well, where are all these transfer fees, the big money we have spent? Unfortunately, it isn't at Man United. And that's what Richard Arnold has identified there. Fair play to him for doing so. He says, I'm not here to defend Joel Glazer. He must speak for himself, which I just sort of want to touch on a little bit later in regards to the sort of frustration and anger sort of directed towards Richard Arnold. Ed Woodward is the one, and the Glazers who have sort of got us into this mess. What sort of contribution Richard Arnold sort of has sort of played in that part, time will tell. But you do have to give him a clean slate. We're giving all these players clean slates. Richard Arnold, while I'm not sold at the moment in regards to proper change happening, I am going to have to give him the benefit of the doubt and stick by him. And this is one thing. It's a step in the right direction, whatever you make of his answers. I think it is a step in the right direction. Now, I'll just go to one or two comments in the live chat before I move on, and Larry might be coming back to us. So I'll just throw in just a few comments here. George here, out of form, yes, we need an update on what's going on with our club. Our club doesn't know how to communicate with its fans. If they did, the fans wouldn't record anything. Dion here, without a video, the club would have stood up. Without a video, the club would have stood up any quotes that Arnold made. Andy, for instance, could have... just went blank there for a little bit. Could have said anything that confirmed with a phone call. And the football capital Borche here. The owners need to have a look at the numbers the clips are doing, which tells you fans want to hear from the owners and the CEO about issues at the club. Larry, good to have you back, mate. Can Richard Arnold learn from this? Because he has come out of this positive, or whatever you think of the answers, which we'll sort of dissect in a little bit in some of the other quotes. He has come out Man United fans have praised him. Not often a Manchester United board member gets praised. And I'm just thinking, could Richard Arnold say, now obviously he doesn't want to be meeting fans in his driveway every weekend, but could he take this as something he can sort of get out in front? And we obviously know the positivity or the weight Man United do put on PR. If he can sort of do, not buy every fan he sees a beer at the pub, but if he can do something like this regularly, he can see the benefit in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Richard Arnold can find a way, even if it's just quarterly, the way they do reports in terms of the investment reports, as obviously in terms of United being on the American Stock Exchange, I'd like to see them do that from a footballing perspective. Get Richard Arnold releasing a video that goes on MUTV, talking about all the updates that are happening in terms of the football club, things that they're working on, transfer targets, whatever it might be, investments into the training ground. I think fans would absolutely lap that up. And that's been the biggest criticism under the Glazers. The communication to the fans has been non-existent. So all we're doing is going off everything we see, which is the debt. And I saw a report today, 33 million in pounds being taken out. Considering the club has, taken a loss over the last few years. I mean, obviously they're still making profit, but a loss in terms of in reference to previous years. It's quite poor, particularly when the club is underperforming. I just thought it's quite poor taste. And Richard Arnold acknowledged that with these guys, didn't he? He said, you might hate the owners, and that's fair enough, but he acknowledges that he's trying to do good, and he acknowledges there needs to be investment into the stadium. And I think if he can make the most of those opportunities to present to the fans, it'd be amazing.
The other 2 points I do want to bring up here, I've got the sort of quotes about the stadium and just the protests in general. Obviously, Richard Arnold's thoughts about the protests around Old Trafford. But just 2 comments here. Borche here. The fans to Richard Arnold, you need to sort that joke when admin out embarrassing us on Twitter. Richard Arnold, they're going, and a new team is taking over. Change is coming. That is one I didn't actually see Richard Arnold say. It's put out there on Twitter. I don't know if that is quite accurate. I don't think Richard Arnold have said that. I think Man United are very happy with their social media presence. So if it's a real quote, it's a real quote, but that isn't one that I didn't see actually in the 4-minute video. So I'm sort of skeptical on that one, but potentially true. Who knows what was said? And Emad here, I've looked for many discussions with Emad in regards to the Glazers, but I disagree with this one. He says, if the team was winning, finishing higher up the table, these fans wouldn't be saying shit. If it was for the Super League protest, you wouldn't have heard anything last season or last year either. We're top of the table in 2009 with the best team in the world, or off the back of having the best team in the world, beating AC Milan 4-0 in Champions Leagues. There was big protests. I think fans do see what's happening now. Yes, it would quiet it off a little bit. No doubt you saw what the Ronaldo signing did. Yes, success and excitement does quiet things. But I think the overall message deep down from Man United fans who do know what's going on, whether we're top of the league or not, we need a change in ownership and we need a change in direction, regardless of results.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, I think, in reference to Emad's comments there. And to an extent, I can see where Emad's coming from, and he's right to an extent, because a lot of the current anger in the fan base is driven by what you see on social media. So we can't deny, Tom, that those who are sitting there in protest in 2010, I think the motive of the fan base, yes, of course, there is those original United fans who obviously are unsupportive of the Glazer ownership. But I also do believe that there is a chunk of that fan base where if we won the Premier League, suddenly I think a lot of the noise does in fact dampen down.
There are very different voices amongst the Manchester United fan base. We discussed it a few weeks ago when Man United announced they're coming to Melbourne. We discussed what the fanfare will be like when we arrive in Melbourne, and there's the Man United fans who will be there to enjoy sort of stuff at the pub and get-togethers, and there'll be Ronaldo fans. And there's different voices, and some of those Ronaldo fans, they're the sort of extremely sort of loud and visible ones, and sometimes those loud messages are the ones that do get sort of heard across. Now, the 2 main topics, and we can get into transfers, but I do want to sort of stay away from that sort of more. Well, transfers are a huge part; they're so important, but there are sort of bigger issues at the club we are facing. And one of the topics was in regards to protests. They asked him, well, I don't know who asked the question, but it came along the lines of Richard Arnold wasn't happy with the club attacking the sponsors in regards to the protests. Yeah, go protest, go send Glazers out, whatever, but attacking the sponsors did nothing wrong. So there are a few quotes here saying the sponsors that have put money into the club shouldn't get punished. What they have done, they've done nothing wrong. They've put money into the club. Now, the fan responded in saying, our logic is if we put pressure on them, it puts pressure on the Glazers. It's a vicious circle. I understand. And Richard Arnold replied, but is it really? You know what it was like in 2005. The pressure put on the owners not to buy the club, but they bought the club anyway. So if you want to think of them that way, they're rock hard and they don't care. Richard Arnold here says it's not that they don't care; they're not frightened of people. So all these protests, we're giving to the sponsors. The sponsors are taking hits. There's all this bad publicity. Ultimately comes down the Glazers don't care what publicity they're getting.
No, they don't. And in the grand scheme of things, you can get fans on Twitter. You can hit Google ads and whatever else and charge those sponsors. But I think Richard Arnold speaks a lot of sense. As football fans, there's this logic where we're almost illogical in a way, and we try and do anything we can to feel a sense of control. It's human nature, in fact. When we can't control a situation, we try to gain control, and that is like a satisfaction that some fans feel like they can drive. But Richard Arnold's right, actually. Ultimately, if you're punishing sponsors, what message does that send to potential sponsors then? If you've got these sponsors, if you're deterring them from investing in the club, actually, you're not really deterring the Glazers. I mean, one, he says it. Secondly, if you then if the Glazers then leave, what motive do sponsors have to buy into Manchester United? Don't tell me we buy new owners and everyone's going to be 100% supportive of them, because I guarantee you they won't, whoever it is.
Yeah, no, you say a good point, and that's one of the things which I don't see this having a huge effect in regards to this online push against the sponsors. As I said, the Glazers don't care, and the sponsors, I think they've got the technology sort of around to. You talk about these Google ads. I think they're very aware of when these situations occur. There's software in place where they can deal with Google and say, "Hang on, this is going to happen over the next 6 weeks," and you can fish out what's legitimate. Sort of click on a website or what's sort of notified as spam. So I don't think and this is with no knowledge of the situation, I don't think those things work personally. They might be really sort of hit hard. My opinion is not. Now, I think it might be fixed up. There'll just seem to be a little bit of static. A few people in the live chat mentioned, but I can't hear it anymore, Larry. I'll check next time you bring up your point. But a comment here from Adam saying the protests doing nothing. Let's be real. The Glazers still making their money. Come to the games early or late does nothing. They're still getting money from people going to the games. But again, and I never criticize a fan for going to the game. Never, ever would I say for a fan not to go to a game. However, that is what it would take. I think if Man United start playing behind closed doors, not behind closed doors, but if 2,000 people show up rather than 72,000 people, that's when people will take note. Unfortunately, again, that is not saying for fans not to go to the game. Of course not. But until that happens, I just don't see the Glazers absolutely taking note. But in regards to the stadium, that was also brought up, Larry. I'll just get your thoughts on here. Richard Arnold was speaking about the stadium. I don't think he was actually asked about the stadium. It was just sort of come up in discussion. And he goes, for the future, for investing in a new stadium, that sort of stuff, to do the latest and the greatest £250 million training ground, we've got to do something. We need to get investors in. I think this is off the back of sort of attacking the sponsors. He's saying, well, hang on, you attack them, you're really attacking the club. We need this money. It's not growing on trees. He says, I need to do that I need to do that to do what I want for the club. I've got to have more cash than I've got now. Man United, like any other club or any other business, do need that cash flow, because a new stadium, no club in the world has that money to build a new stadium without getting it from somewhere. You either borrow it or someone invests it. Spurs took £1 billion mortgage out, so the money's got to come from somewhere. And you may not like our current owners, I get that, but if you want someone else in, they have to look and say, okay, the fans love the club, they love the team, it's positive, because the other bit is, look at that last year, it was an effing nightmare going to the games. So just your thoughts on that part in regards to the stadium, because here we've been over the last couple of weeks and we thought it was spin put out by the club to talk about redoing the stadium or building a new stadium. We thought, well, that's never going to happen. He wasn't really sort of prompted here, yet he is talking about the stadium. So obviously this discussion is happening behind closed doors, and they're talking about whether this a renovation or a new stadium. Just your thoughts on his views in regards to the investment around the stadium.
Yeah, it's interesting because the last time I was on here with you, Tom, I said to you that the talk around the new stadium has kind of gone quiet. And maybe this is why. Maybe it's Richard Arnold telling us, actually, for what we want to do, we need £1 billion, and we simply don't have £1 billion to invest at the moment. I like that there's an acknowledgement there, and I like that he's being open about it. But what I the best part in all of this is he acknowledges the need for investment. So if that's the case, maybe that will be something the Glazers are talking about internally. Is it that they're looking to sell part of the club to get other businesses in or consortiums in to get that rejuvenation into Manchester United? Because I think only with that can the stadium, I suppose, what do we want? We debated on here, remember the show we did. Do you want a brand new stadium? Do you want to keep Old Trafford just with a bit of a facelift? It sounds like they've agreed actually there's a need for a new stadium. If you look at, and look, I love Old Trafford. I mean, I've been in the stadium multiple times. It's old. It needs a lot of work. And I think you can still keep a lot of the framework, but it needs a modern day facelift. It definitely does. So respect to him, because he didn't have to say that. They didn't really bring up the stadium, but he acknowledges what the fans want. He acknowledges that he as a CEO has the ambition to want the best for United. And I think that we can now truthfully put to rest, regardless of what you think of the Glazers, I think we can put this notion to rest of they only want to finish in the top four. It's clear to me that this guy is striving to put United back at the top where they belong. Now, whether he achieves it or not, time will tell. But respect to him, I think his heart's in the right place.
Yeah, definitely. Audio is a little bit better, a little bit static, but there's only one more point I do want to bring up before we do wrap up. Dion here saying he signalled naming rights. I think if a new stadium was to be done, maybe not the renovation, but if a new stadium was to be built, as much as we'd hate it, and even if you're 100% behind a new stadium, unfortunately, it would involve naming rights. He pretty much alluded to it. I don't think you can build a new stadium now in terms of the size and the cost that it would be to Manchester United without putting someone's name on it, unfortunately.
Tom, let me ask you a question. Newcastle Stadium, what do you call it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's St James's Park. I don't know what it's called. I call it Tottenham Stadium White Hart Lane. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, definitely it would remain Old Trafford. However,
that's it. You can put a name on it. It won't matter. At the end of the day, if it brings money into the club, we will always know it as Old Trafford. I really wouldn't be opposed to it.
It's hard. It's almost just one of those ones like Chevrolet. Who cares what the sponsor is? But when it's a big logo like that, you think, oh, hang on, what's happening there? You wouldn't put it past Man United putting some stupid sort of, I don't know, think of some stupid brand, the McDonald's Old Trafford or something. Like it would be a stupid type of name, which would just be turned into a meme, which sort of frustrates. But in regards, so I don't have the quote in front of me here, but just the last topic to bring up, we'll sort of tie it back into transfers before we do wrap up. Again, this was a quote that I saw on Twitter. I didn't actually see in the 4.5-minute video. So in the live chat, do let me know if I'm wrong, and this has come from the horse's mouth himself. But talking about Frankie de Jong, the budget is no. I saw this bit where he said money is not an issue. There is no real budget. If the football director and the manager wants him, we're going to go get this player. So he's saying the money's there. What's the hold up then? Now, obviously, there are huge logistics in there, which we're sort of not privy to, and why these deals do take time. But he has come out and said, if Eric Ten Hag and John Murtough want this player, we're going to go get them. And the quotes that sort of followed on Twitter are around Frankie de Jong saying, Manchester United, we're over there in Spain at the moment trying to work on this deal. It's just going to take time. Just your thoughts on that one?
I think the same fans who complain that the deal's not done are also the same fans who say United get rinsed every time that they agree a transfer fee. So if John Murtough is taking his time trying to make sure United get value for money, then credit to him. Because I promise you, if we sign Frankie de Jong for £80 million, the same fans whinging will be complaining about the transfer fee. And then because of that transfer fee, if we then struggle to bring in a fourth or a fifth player because we've maximized £200 million, you know what I mean? So I just think we need to be a bit patient. Don't worry about what the other clubs are doing. At the end of the day, the transfer window's been open for about 10 days. We've got time. It's
but can you understand? And look, I'm guilty of it. I'm getting a little bit frustrated, but I understand. And usually, I'm the most patient of fans there are. Usually, I'm sort of defending the club at all costs in regards to calm down. It's not as bad as it seems. But here I am, sort of venting that frustration. But do you think you're completely right in saying be patient? But do you think we kind of do have that right to be sort of pissed off at the moment, because whatever Richard Arnold said, and whether we agree or disagree, or whatever we sort of made of his sort of demeanour in that interview, the so-called interview, we're seeing the same mistakes that we have seen in the past. We've seen, let's put a Frankie de Jong and let's say he's a Tony Cruz or a Cesc Fabregas. We've seen this before. And I'm just thinking, okay, it's a new man in charge. Let's give him a clean slate. But ultimately, he's part of the old regime, whatever we think of him. I'm just saying we have seen this before.
The key difference is the transfer window is not closed. Now, if this transfer window closes and we fail to sign Frankie de Jong, I'll be agreeing with you 100%. But
is there a thing, though, in terms of we sort of give the manager what he wants? He needs a full pre-season. What do we get all these players? Let's say he wants 3 players. He wants Timber, Torres, and de Jong. We get Timber, Torres, and de Jong in next week. Fantastic, full pre-season. Is it the same transfer window if he gets them all in on deadline day?
But that won't, that's the thing. I think, yes, it is. If it means
but is it? Like, aren't we saying we shouldn't get this done early so you get a full pre-season and they're off at the World Cup? Like, I understand all these things are sort of complex and it's not just easy. It's like sign the player. I understand there's huge issues and I don't want to sort of overly criticise the club. But Haaland's come in pre-season. Darwin Núñez has come in pre-season. It wouldn't shock me if they start signing.
Have been at their clubs for 6 and 7 years. So they got time. They can play ahead of time.
But if Richard Arnold and the club... If Richard Arnold and the club are backing Ten Hag, which I'm not saying they're not, but if they are fully backing him, pretend Ten Hag's been there for a decade. Put your belief in him that he has sort of succeeded at Man United.
They're backing him, but the reality is he was appointed as manager in March. So when did they sit and discuss with him what player targets he had? Up until May, up until the final game of the season, it was in the Netherlands winning with Ajax. So there hasn't been a genuine time window for him to identify who his targets have been. The thing with Klopp and Guardiola, they would know that Núñez is a target. They'd know Haaland is a target from back in December, probably. Like they'd know Sadio Mane is leaving, and then they need a plan. And that's the thing. There is an advantage in having a manager there for long periods of time. I don't think we can understate that. It's not as simple as United are slow. If Ten Hag only officially started 3 weeks ago, why are we outraged that we've only identified who his targets are? You know what I mean? I just think we need to be a little bit realistic about this. The other side, look, let me put it to you this way. Most United fans will tell you that they didn't want Núñez. Most United fans will tell you they didn't want Bissouma. They didn't want Haaland. All right, great. Well, we don't want these players anyway. So if that's the case, what are we upset about?
Oh, no, I definitely agree with that in terms of, okay, we didn't want this player. Well, why are we pissed? I completely agree with that. But our manager does want a player. I'm just thinking if Liverpool's main target was Darwin Núñez, well, that they got him. If Haaland was the main target for City, well, they got him. And I fully agree with your point in regards to being patient. It is going to take time. But we need to go get Ten Hag's main man. Even if Ten Hag's main man is someone we never even heard of. If it's if it's Christian Eriksen, go get him. Now, obviously, I made the point the other day that we can't get him for another week or two, but it's just... I completely agree. And look, I'm guilty of sort of venting this frustration, but we do need to show patience. And yes, I do go along the lines of thinking where if we get him in August, okay, it's not going to be ideal. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be complaining in May. I don't think if we sign someone on July the 28th or August the 15th, it's not going to make a difference come May. That'll be down to the football players and the manager. But I've seen this since 2013. I've seen the exact same thing happen. Now, yes, I want to give Richard Arnold a clean slate, but call me skeptical until I've been proven otherwise.
Look, I'm going to lean on the side of optimism. I think United will get the business done. I mean, when are we in Melbourne? Just under a month from now, so I wouldn't be too concerned, mate. If we're in Melbourne and we've signed 2 of the 3 or 4 players we expect to bring in, if the likes of Phil Jones and Dean Henderson have been shipped out, then my last point, all right, they're getting the deals done.
My last point, which I think is potentially even more important, which actually I'll probably go by, it is more important. Maybe that's a bit drastic. Maybe someone correct me if I'm wrong. But Borcha here brings up, not worried about the no signings, but surely we should have sold a few. The players are still at the club. Now, obviously, in terms of Mata, Jesse Lingard, Paul Pogba have left the club. But in terms of who we can sell, they're still at the club. And it takes us ages to sell players. And if Richard Arnold's talking about getting this cash into the club, what do we sell a player for? What can you see Eric Bailly going for? If we were to sign Eric Bailly tomorrow, we'd sign him for 30 million. I'll be shocked if we can get 3 million for him. The clubs won't pay money for him. So I'm just thinking, where's this money going to come in for?
All right. Well, to Bash's point, I've just said, like, in terms of Eric Ten Hag only putting his feet under the desk in the last 3 weeks or so. So if we're going to say we didn't know who his targets were, let's also allow him the time to identify which players he also wants to keep and wants to leave.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that that's now clear to the board. But we also have to, and I think something that was key in what Richard Arnold said said, "Do you want me to sign players? Is that what
that was a good one.
And he made the dig about Ed Woodward. So now we have to remember the mess that United are in, and that includes the wage structure and the contracts that have been offered to some players, is all been done under the tutelage of Ed Woodward. So if that's the case, unfortunately, United are in this difficult position where it's going to be hard to get these players out the door so quickly.
No, look, I completely agree. It's a good last point there, Larry, broadcasting from the Titanic too. Well, we're just about to wrap up.
Guys.
But it has been a bit fascinating chat. Look, I agree with pretty much everything you've said tonight, Larry. Pretty much bang on and all of it, and sort of put me down a level in regards to reminding me the importance of patience. But I think it is interesting that Ten Hag hasn't seen these players in training. Now, ultimately, we've seen these players play for a decade, and obviously they're not being good enough. But we are here saying give them a clean slate. Eric Ten Hag has only seen videos of them. He needs to get down, not just sort of watch them on the training ground, but also meet them as people and see what their ambitions are. And that will be a huge thing for the manager. And that obviously hasn't happened yet. Would we go back on the 27th of June, which I think is the first club for the first team, which will be back. I think every other club is going to go back early July, but Ten Hag wants them back in. The available players is obviously pretty much, actually now I look at it, pretty much no players will be back on the 27th of June because they've all been playing internationals. But your likes of, let's say, Alex Tellez or who hasn't been playing international football.
Marcus Rashford putting in some serious
Rashford will be back. Rashford will be doing individual training with Eric Ten Hag, which might be a good thing. Who knows? But that is obviously back next week. They'll be training. And a little bit of a sing-song in the live chat. Larry, my heart will go on forever in regards to the Titanic. But it has been a pleasure chatting, Larry. As I said, some very good points made. And look, while there was a bit of transfer discussion in there, it was good very unique, especially as a podcast, got to be here discussing Man United CEO buying a few fans a couple of beers. Maybe he can buy us a few beers in Melbourne if he shows up.
Look, mate, if he doesn't buy you any, I'll take care of you. Don't you worry.
How would you approach that interview if we had, hypothetical, Richard Arnold meets us at the pub in Melbourne? How do we approach that? Obviously, we ask for permission. We get into science, say, do we have your permission to be filmed? 100%, of course. But how do we approach that? Because we're not just we'd like to be sensible and mature about it and just say, oh, you're doing a rubbish job, you're no good, what's this about? You'd want to get the most answers out of him, and you can't throw him under the bus completely. So there needs to be a balance to those questions in regards to not really abusing him, but also sort of butter him up a little bit. How would you approach an interview like that? Like, what would be your sort of main question in regards to one that sort of wouldn't piss him off, but also you'll get a relatively good answer, not a scripted sort of company line?
I would, if I could ask Richard Arnold one question, it would be, give me two focuses for you over the next 12 months, but also the next 3 years. Tell me what those are and what will be the benefit to Manchester United in that time. So what are your priorities in the short term and the long term? Because I think in that answer, you'll get a clear picture of what the priorities are for United. Is it stadium? Is it getting the playing team right? Is it investing in terms of youth? It would be interesting to see. It's very clear that he's letting the football people make the footballing decisions. So I'd be really interested to see what he foresees his vision for Manchester United.
I think my question would have been along the lines of that last thing in regards to not trying to throw Ed Woodward under the bus, but seemingly, seeing though he has done that already, I would have said, you've been at the club for a long time. What are you going to do different to Ed Woodward? And see if he sort of highlights what some of the issues were, because he obviously would have seen those firsthand, which you obviously alluded to. Ed Woodward obviously did have a huge say in transfers. He pretty much come out and said Ed Woodward was signing the players. So I would have liked sort of a little bit more clarity in regards to that. But just to finish on, I don't want to, oops, there we go, the water bottle, but I just want to I don't want to discuss it, but this is where this podcast leaves. Jesse Lingard and that TikTok thing in New York or wherever he is. I'll split on Pogba and Lingard in terms of, wish them well. It's probably best to leave, or could we have kept the player? Their behaviour since they've left, both Jesse Lingard and Paul Pogba, thank God it's over. Just thank God it's over.
Paul Pogba, seriously, this guy, who's the character in the blonde lad in Goal? You know the guy who likes to party and he thinks he's a great footballer.
In Goal too. The Gavin Harris.
That's Paul Pogba. Yeah. Paul Pogba's that guy. Seriously, he's got more
No,
height than his footballing ability could ever deliver.
No, look, I'm so glad. Look, and I do wish them well. Like the Man United Academy pros going through, George here all over it with Gavin Harris. But just what they've done, just as I said, wish them well. But thank God it's over. Like it's coming true that we are best without them. So hopefully we have turned a page. And Emad here in regards to Pogba and Lingard, Bellend FC and Dion obviously agreeing Stoke they're gone. But look, they're gone. Definitely official. Well, actually, technically they're still Man United players for a couple more days. Still under contract, but those free transfers will kick in on the 1st of July. But until then, hopefully we'll have an announcement or two, maybe Christian Eriksen, which I alluded to. A lot of people saying he's going to stay in Tottenham now or stay in London now. I still have my money on him joining Man United in a couple of weeks' time. But the big one now is obviously Frankie de Jong, with Richard Arnold pretty much alluding to he's the target. They are working on a deal. Fingers crossed they can get it done. But Larry, it's been a pleasure as always, even with your mic difficulties. But speaking a lot of sense tonight, Larry. Really enjoyed it. Not that you don't often, but some great points obviously in the live chat as well. Make sure you do leave a like on the video. If you could subscribe if you're new on our road to 1,000 subscribers, that would be great if you haven't already. If you're watching on playback, so leave some comments in the comment box below and we'll sort of reply to them all. But Larry, pleasure.
Pleasure, mate. Cheers to those in the comments as well. And not long till Melbourne now, so I'm excited to get down there.
No, definitely not long until Melbourne for sure. Eric, I've got my flag actually. I'll get it in the next one. They're just here. The flags. I've got the Eric Ten Hag flag up, so maybe I'll put it behind me for the next show. If we have any breaking news, we'll probably be back live tomorrow night. So until then, cheers, Dion. Good to see you, mate, in here as always. Value your opinion as always. So until then, chat to you when we chat to you. Cheers.